You're listening to the Final Say Radio Show, a Rappaport Media production, with your host Brett Rappaport and co-host John Rappaport.
Without further ado, I'll introduce Jim Hanson, Senior Fellow with the Center for Security Policy, and he's with us now, again, returning to the Final Say Radio Show. Jim, it's always great to speak with you, and thank you for taking the time this afternoon to speak with John and I.
Always a pleasure.
I was just saying, it's amazing to me when you have these situations of national security or defense or other, related issues, and things that are so important and that really should be in the forefront of the discussion in the media and amongst American citizens, gets lost in the news cycle for such nonsensical things that take over. And there are lives on the line, there are nations on the line, borders are being changed on a daily basis, innocent people around the globe are paying the dearest price, right? And
absolutely,
almost everyone is asleep at the wheel except for you guys and us.
There's a few others. I think we've got a few allies, but not enough, and we should make some more.
Yeah, and of course, the brave men and women who are sitting there in the line of fire, protecting us.
Yeah, and there's plenty of them in plenty of places around the world, awful busy right now.
Yeah. So, John and I, we've been debating for a long time Hillary Clinton, and I just want to make a quick comment here because, and then John has a question on Hillary, but the Clintons, I mean, this is like my lifetime of the Clintons. It's been filled with scandal, odd things, people disappearing, strange deaths surrounding people associated with them, corruption, ethical things, nonstop. Do they have a law license? You name it. How they deal with their foreign friends? I mean, there's so much there for so many years. It is really hard to believe that she could ever be considered for any office, let alone the highest office, and that with all the recent things that you and I and John are about to get into, how is this even a possibility in this nation? Aren't we better than this?
No. I mean, okay, let's go ahead and admit it. We're not. It's sad. It's disgraceful. We run our politics like American Idol, except the people on American Idol at least have talent. And I don't know. I wish it wasn't so, but the Clintons being a political dynasty is a sad disgrace.
Well, look, first off, this is an interesting transition from our discussion that we were having with Bill Kirpin from American Commitment, which is that we were talking about ethics and Bob Menendez, if you heard some of that while you were waiting to come in. But the reality is this is very similar. This is influence peddling, but what scares me is this is influence peddling at a much higher level. It's not, $20 million a year that of corrupt money going into our Medicare system, but literally, what does tens of millions of dollars buy foreign governments, foreign emissaries, sheikdoms, et cetera, when they are participating in the Clinton Foundation? Because even though you might have tax barriers between the organizations, anyone who thinks that there's a power barrier, if you will, between the Clinton Foundation and what Bill is doing with his personal influence, or what Hillary did either as Secretary of State or what she would do as president, I think is nuts.
And I don't think it's just tens of millions. I think that's a lowball estimate for the amount of money they've taken in from people who should not be allowed to have that much influence on a potential president. The legal machinations they've gone through to make sure that they haven't violated any laws, I don't doubt that they did that, but that doesn't make it right. It's absolutely wrong, and if we're going to put up with that, we get what we deserve. But I would hope after 8 years of a rank amateur destroying not just our domestic economy and the culture of our country, but our national security, I would just hope we might vote for competence when it comes time to pull the lever in 2016.
Well, I think you bring up, you made a comment about ultimately the American voter is to blame. And you're right, the voters are guilty, because you have to understand that you have to know when wrong is wrong. I mean, if you and I were to move to Yemen for the sake of marrying a 9-year-old girl, that might be legal, but it's wrong. And this is the problem I have with so much of what's gone on. And by the way, when I said tens of millions, those are individual contributors. Collectively,
there you go.
It's enormous amounts of money. But I want to transition this to your area of expertise, which really is troubling to me, is not just the influence, but who are the people who we know do have influence on Hillary. So I wanted you, if you would, to tie in the email scandal to a national security perspective, and particularly include, it's not just Hillary, there are other people who are using those email servers who have consistently had influence on Hillary and American foreign policy, particularly with regard to national security.
Oh, and there's so much wrong, again, with the email scandal. First off being that the idea that Hillary did not discuss classified information in those emails is a bald-faced lie. It would have been impossible for her to use them for any related State Department business and not by aggregation create classified conversations. She claims she didn't send classified documents. Okay, that may be true, which means she did not send as an attachment something with a classification of secret, top secret, or whatever. That may be true. But the information she was discussing that was classified, that she included separately in emails, when combined, would absolutely create everything necessary for some highly classified conversations to have happened. And I can only hope that good old Trey Gowdy there in the House with his Benghazi Select Committee somehow subpoenas his way to those servers, because there is a treasure trove of wrongness. We want to talk about wrong? It's all there. Whether she deleted it or not, I think there are ways to forensically get to the things that were done that show her disdain for the rules and also the risk she put our country at by taking those conversations that she should have been having on secure means and having them on the most unsecure means of communication.
Absolutely. We're speaking now with Jim Hanson, who's a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy. Jim, I have to say this. If we had a legitimate attorney general or even anyone working underneath them at this point, they would have already pursued this and filed charges. I don't see how someone in her position could be doing what she's doing with this email. I think it's so offensive to the very rule of law that this nation's supposed to be living under. I mean, it's really, I think this is one of the biggest scandals this nation has faced. We just don't really realize or recognize it yet. I mean, compare this to Watergate. You can't even compare it. Did Watergate compromise national security? Did Watergate deal with foreign influence peddling and confiscation and control of the U.S. government? I mean, this is insane. And for her to pretend like it's not a big deal?
Well, she didn't do herself any favors with that famous in her press conference. She just shrugged it off, saying, no big deal. I mean, leave me alone. It's for my convenience. I'm not smart enough to be able to operate two devices. I think the funniest thing I saw all week was a picture Bristol Palin posted of her mom. Hillary says, I couldn't do this because I couldn't manage two devices. And Bristol sent a picture of her mom to the internet where Sarah had her personal phone, her State of Alaska governor phone, and a baby on her hip, all at the same time. So I think competence-wise, I don't think Hillary can claim much. And I think you brought up something else that I think bears a lot of scrutiny. Her aides, Huma Abedin and the rest of them, were also using this private email system. And Huma Abedin herself is a questionable individual whose parents are deeply involved in some Muslim Brotherhood operations, and she herself has very questionable associations, was a member of the Muslim Students Association and other things. And I would really, really be interested in seeing what kind of conversations went on between those two and members of a lot of these Arab and Muslim Brotherhood groups that she has direct contact with. And right now, I think all those they're trying to make sure went down the memory hole. So I bet there's some very interesting stuff went on during the Arab Spring and during some of the other things that happened during Hillary's tenure at State that she's almost certainly making sure we're never going to hear about. So I don't know that there's any way we can get to them for certain, but if we do, I bet it's very interesting reading.
I'd like to be a fly on the computer. I've got Hillary's new campaign slogan though: convenience over country. Vote for me.
Oh, God, that is so sad. The lies she told at her press conference about why she did any of this, what the rationale was, none of them can stand up to the light of day. But again, we blamed the voters previously, and obviously everyone's responsible for themselves. But the media is such lapdogs to her and Bill and the rest of the Democrats that people don't get accurate information about just how bad this is. The people who listen to this show do. The people who pay attention to what the center writes and some of the stuff that happens, Fox News is an ally, but overall there is nothing but butt covering and butt smooching going on as far as the Clintons, and it's disgraceful.
Jim, I wanted to attach to something that you brought up because I didn't want to, and I'm going to turn it right back to Brett, but I didn't want to let this slide through the cracks about the intelligence in documents that may not seem intelligent. I've done some viewing at various different reports just for my work in social media, and I can tell you there's numerous cases where, especially in college research projects, where people have taken what is seemingly anonymized data, not neutralized, but anonymized data points, ran algorithm against them, and then found out exactly who they were. And I'll just point one out, for example, a couple of years back, in 2009, and information's exponentially grown even since then, but a Massachusetts insurance commissioner had wanted to release anonymized data, and what they thought was complete anonymized data run through an algorithmic process. Somebody was able to point out and associate different people with different illnesses, including the governor himself, because of age, locations, various other things. All of a sudden it spits out, and people were able to find that. And that's what, when we talk about China having, I think actually from information from the center, I've heard, China is estimated to have like 130-some-odd thousand people working on just an army of hackers working for them. And so these folks know how to parse data to find out real information. And once you have that information, even if the information doesn't necessarily disclose a secret, if it compromises an individual, that individual is now, once compromised, is now a target for espionage, for blackmailing, bribery, et cetera. So even at the highest, most mundane level, there is danger to be had, and it's real, and it's proven by dozens of university students at fine schools like MIT.
Oh, you are absolutely right. And I mean, that's the kind of the high-tech version of taking all the information, crunching it, and then looking at the patterns and figure out what's going on. The even simpler piece is that we base classifications on things like, if you are going to talk about an operation that's ongoing in a country, if you name the operation Silver Snake in Kenya, and you give the dates of that operation, each one of those pieces of information by itself is not classified. But if you combine the three in any way, you have breached a classification level. You've created a trigger. And at that point, the aggregation of those three pieces of information can push it up to top secret. So even though they were nothing by themselves, if you know what, when, where, all of a sudden you've got classified data. And of course Hillary did that regularly, because people don't think about those triggers when they're casually communicating. And that I guarantee her servers are full of classification triggers, and they are in the hands of probably the Chinese, the Russian, and potentially the Iranians, all of whom hack us regularly, and all of whom knew she was using this, because it was 2 years ago she got hacked by a hacker named Guccifer, who put out that she was communicating with her aides using this email. That came out and is well known. So the information's out there, and our enemies have it. Thanks, Hillary.
The sad thing is, I wouldn't put it past her or some of these people they don't need to be hacked to give up information. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. But when you look at this situation, I just want to point out something that someone in the media once done, Geraldo Rivera, while doing war corresponding, gave away troop positions, right, amongst other things. it's very easy to reveal information even if you don't intend to, which is exactly why you're supposed to have protocols and safety measures to secure the best possible means information that's vital, regardless of whether it's, close to being important or not. But you're correctly, when you put all the information together, it's all very important. But she's broken the protocol. We have a president, by the way, this has to be mentioned in this conversation, his cell phone. How come he has a phone, unlike other presidents, that's not being completely tracked? How many other people are using some private email for other purposes in this administration? It's a horrible precedent, and it's something that goes against the checks and balances that we've set up to protect ourselves.
Oh, it's the most transparent administration ever.
Yeah, but they're supposed to be the leaders who set the example, and they dictate to us what we're supposed to do and follow. Okay, I guess we're all supposed to cheat and lie and conceal everything we do.
I think you're misunderstanding the precedent and the example they're setting. The example they're setting is the rules are for me, not for thee, not for me. And there have been so many people caught in this administration using fake and personal emails to specifically avoid the accountability for their actions. So it's endemic. I think it would be nice. I would love it if Anonymous or one of these other groups got a bug up their butt and just decided to go after them. Because the best hackers in the world don't work for the Chinese or the Russians. They work for the private groups. And if these guys got it in their mind to go ahead and try and capture this information, they could make a lot of people pretty sad about what came out.
Absolutely. So we've probably got about 5.5 minutes left, max. So I want to jump into kind of a lightning round with a few things. So on the same subject, we're talking about security violations for information and how it pertains to national security. Well, Jim, just look at the census in 2010 showed that in America there were 53,364 centenarians. For our semi-educated listeners, that means they're over 100 years old. So only slightly more than 53,000. Right, thank you. You're welcome. I wasn't picking on you, but maybe I was. So slightly more than 53,000 people. But ironically, we had Congressman Ron Johnson just brought to our attention that we had 6.5 million people on the Social Security Administration's agency rolls that are at 112 years or older. So while we might look at this first off and see another example of government fraud and abuse, how do we have 6.5 million people when there's only 53,000 on the census? What I ask you is, where's the security risk in this? Who are those people using those other almost 6.5 million Social Security numbers? So forget the economics. Who are those people? What are they doing in this country, and what are their intentions?
Oh, I think there is a giant hidden trailer park somewhere in the wilds of Arizona with all these old people playing golf. That's what it is. It's nothing nefarious. It's illegal aliens. It's illegal aliens who are just using whatever Social Security number they come up with and what other information they can get through because we don't bother to check. So I think the bulk of it is probably that. I'm sure some of them are people who used, those means to infiltrate and are sitting waiting to do something much worse than work for crap wages. But the bottom line is you're pointing out a gaping flaw in our ability to know who's in our country for what reason, and in this administration's opinion, even care who's here or why they're here, because they don't. They're fine with it.
I would argue some of them are posing as the Senate Majority Leader, but
he's a zombie. I think he's a cast member from The Walking Dead. That guy is lost in space. Wow.
He's definitely a sign of you have to consider age limits sometimes. But one last thing with the few minutes we have left. Benjamin Netanyahu paid us a visit recently, and thankfully so, to speak to all the members of Congress and deliver what our president won't or can't, or both. And
right.
That's a discussion on Iran and the seriousness of dealing with that. In addition, you have GOP senators and others who've signed on to letters with regards to the negotiations on Iran. Do you feel that any of this will have an impact and change the course that this administration is on, or are there other types of actions we're going to have to take, or will Israel simply have to go it alone with the support of maybe half this country, or half the Senate, or half the House?
It was wonderful to hear from the leader of the free world, and unfortunately that's the Prime Minister of Israel, not the President of the United States. He gave a magnificent speech pointing out the problems that Iran has caused that our administration's ignoring. So that was brilliant. I think Tom Cotton and the other 46 senators who sent the letter to Iran pointed out something the Iranians already knew, that Obama is not giving them a deal that matters, and they're not taking it. But they pointed out and made Obama at least have to answer for the fact, why are you avoiding Congress and making a deal that you can't enforce and that the next president can simply ignore? So I think both of those were useful. I think they will change the course of events. I don't know if they'll change them enough to stop the Iranians from getting a bomb, because they're hell-bent on it, and we've done nothing to stop them.
Yeah, it's really shameful, but we've known this is coming, and unfortunately that's where we're at. And, God help this country, and may we have a much stronger president next go-around. Jim Hanson, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. I have a new title for you. You're no longer the senior fellow. You're the fiery senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy. And,
actually, I can let you know, I'm now the executive vice president. I got promoted. So I'm Frank's XO. Great. I'm his number 2.
Oh, excellent. And, well, that's fantastic. You've got so much passion and fire within you, and that's exactly what any organization needs. And I know you guys are going to be even more successful with you moving up the ranks. Awesome, Jim.
Well, thanks for having me on. You guys do a great job highlighting these issues.
Okay. Well, say hello to all the folks there at the center, and hopefully John and I will see you all soon.